Over recent decades, a disconcerting trend has emerged. Testosterone levels have experienced a steady decline, while estrogen levels have surged dramatically. The delicate balance of the thyroid, a vital component of hormonal equilibrium, is also under considerable strain. The concept of hormonal imbalance has evolved beyond more deficiencies in individual hormones. We now confront a new reality shaped by the presence of specific chemicals in our environment, in the very air we breathe, the food we consume, and the water we drink. These chemicals, absent in times past, wield the power to obstruct hormone production, disrupt communication between hormones and cells, and even masquerade as hormones themselves. The impact of this phenomenon extends far beyond its visible effects on muscle building and reproduction. In this episode, we embark on a journey to unravel the complex interplay between heavy metals and hormones, dissecting the far-reaching consequences it holds. Today, I have Dr. Minkoff with us, who you've already heard his bio, and he's got a very extensive bio. And I heard Dr. Minkoff on a podcast a very long time ago, talking about heavy metals, and he's got quite the story, which is why he got into the heavy metals. But Dr. Minkoff, first off, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Karen. Good to be here.
So I've heard you tell the story actually several times, and I really I appreciate hearing it, which is your wife's story. That's where it all began for you.
That's right. That's
Looking
right.
out for the ladies. Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
So take us back to that time, and if you could tell the listeners the story about what happened with your wife.
Sure. So my wife is a registered nurse. She was a microbiologist, and I was in doing emergency medicine at the time. I originally trained in pediatrics, and then I did a subspecialty in infectious disease, and I worked in a hospital as a infection control officer. And I switched careers and went into emergency medicine. And my wife was always interested in nutrition and optimum sort of body health and performance. And she started going to lectures of various people and started to learn about health. And one of the things that she learned about was that heavy metals were in the environment, and that they could hurt you. They were very toxic. And part of that was that when she was a young girl, she had had a lot of cavities in her teeth, and her dentist had put in silver mercury amalgam fillings. And she had them in her premolar and molar teeth, both on the top and the bottom. So, that's a lot of teeth. Mm-hmm. And so when she started learning about the toxicity of mercury, she thought, well, she should get these mercury fillings out of her mouth. So for those of you that don't know it, if you look in your mouth and you see glistening grayish silver type things, those are an amalgam. An amalgam means it's a mixture of things. And the amalgam is made out of liquid mercury. So mercury at room temperature is liquid. And if you add copper, zinc, tin, silver, you can get it into a rather hard thing that you can shove into a tooth, and it will stick there. They're very durable, but they're 50% mercury. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at mercury as a metal, it's a heavy metal, it's liquid at room temperature, but it boils at 110. Now, 110 is not very hot. An average coffee from a restaurant or that you make is probably in the 160 to 180 degree. And if you take something that's liquid at room temperature, boils at 110, and then you subject it to 160, 170, you are going to aerosolize. You're going to turn it from a liquid to a gas. And that gas is going to go in your palate, in your throat, in your stomach, maybe in your lungs, and it can poison you. Now, mercury as a poison is very poisonous. It in microgram amounts, it's poisonous and it damages nerve cells, damages nerve tissue. And so you don't want that. Now, it's so poisonous, just to give you an idea of the magnitude of it, that if you took a single mercury filling, which is about a half a gram, 500 milligrams, ground it up real fine, put it in a lake that was 10 acres big, that had fish in it, if the EPA would come by and measure the mercury levels in that lake, they would put a fish advisory on it, which means if you fish here, don't eat the fish because the fish are so toxic, they will poison you. Now get the magnitude of this. A single filling in a 10-acre lake. Now, when I first got interested in this, I'm going to divert the story for a second. I found that like if in a doctor's office, one of the old time thermometers, which had mercury in it, was dropped. It was a hazmat emergency. And the hazmat team would come in full garb getup, and they would do the cleanup, and they would then had a meter that would measure mercury vapor. And when they were done cleaning up, they would take air readings of the mercury vapor to see if there was any left after the cleanup. Because if the mercury vapor levels were above 10 parts per billion, they still had to keep cleaning because it wasn't safe for anyone to come back in that building. Now, I got interested in this and I bought a mercury vapor meter, the same one that the hazmat guys had.
Yeah.
And I started having people come in the clinic and then open your mouth. You got mercury fillings. I want to take a reading on your fillings. Okay. They would hold their breath, stick the thing in there for 10 seconds, and it would give you a mercury vapor reading. My associate at the time he wasn't going for the get rid of mercury fillings thing. He thought he was fine.
Yes.
And he had a reading of 350 milligrams. It was 350, and the EPA would contaminate a room at 10.
Wow.
So this is not small potatoes. This is big. Okay. So my wife decides this is bad stuff. I'm going to get rid of it. She calls up a dentist. This is 1995-ish. Okay. The consciousness on mercury was pretty much zero.
Yeah.
Okay. And he took a high-speed drill and drilled out 2 molars on the bottom, 2 premolars, 2 molars on the top, 2 premolars. Same thing on both sides. Okay. So that's 16 mercury fillings.
Oh my gosh.
And afterwards, it was probably a month or two afterwards, she didn't feel good. And she started complaining about her throat and felt like her thyroid. And so I'm in the emergency room. I know all the good doctors. And I send her to the endocrinologist, and he does some tests on her thyroid. And he says, you've got thyroiditis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It's an autoimmune condition where the body's making attack proteins on the thyroid, and her thyroid was inflamed and it was tender. And he said, we don't really have a treatment for this. Your thyroid's producing enough hormone, so we don't have to give you any thyroid hormone, and it'll eventually cool off. Okay, fine. Then she starts complaining about right below her right rib cage. Like it doesn't feel right. And I sent her to the liver specialist. And the liver specialist said her liver tests, SGOT, SGPT, were elevated. And he did an ultrasound of her liver, and he did some other tests in her, and he said, I think whatever the autoimmune condition is, he did tests for viral hepatitis, all this stuff, all came back negative. He said, I think this is the same autoimmune condition that's getting to your thyroid, and I don't have anything for you to do, and we're just going to wait. Okay. So then one morning she wakes up. Now, she's a triathlete. So she's a swim, bike, run, races. She's a very good triathlete. Usually in anything she enters, she's in the podium, first one, two, or three.
Wow.
Okay. So she's very fit, very sports oriented, trained every day. And she wakes up one morning and she tries to lift her arm up, and she's got a definite weakness of her shoulder muscle, of her deltoid muscle. And she also had a weakness of her glute muscle, of her butt muscle on the same side. So it's like, oh God, what's this now? Okay. So where does she go? I sent her to the good neurologist. And the good neurologist says, this is starting to look like you got maybe MS. And you need to take interferon, prednisone, big drugs that make people sick. And I was at this point kind of mad at her for doing this in the first place because I didn't know anything about mercury. And why was she doing this when she was just before?
Yeah.
Okay. But once I got over that, I by accident went to pick her up. So she owns a home healthcare business. She's a nurse, and they send nurses out to do dressing changes and bathe people and do all this stuff. And a guy had moved in next door in the little shop strip mall that she was in, that on the marquee, it said natural dentistry, which is a term I'd never heard before. And so in the middle of all this, one day I went to pick her up and I saw natural dentistry, and he happened to be walking out of his office at the same time. And I went over to him and I introduced myself, and he gave me his name, and I said, well, what is natural dentistry? I never heard that term. And he said something very interesting. He said, very few dentists have an appreciation that the mouth is actually part of the body, that it's in the body and part of the body, and that you wouldn't do things in the mouth that you wouldn't do in other parts of the body because it's part of the body. Duh.
Yeah.
So I said, give me an example. He said, well, mercury fillings. Mercury's poisonous, like super big time poisonous. You put it in the mouth, people chew, they eat hot food, it goes into their body. And experiments had been done with sheep where they give sheep amalgam fillings, and then they label the mercury so they can track where it goes. And it goes into their kidneys, and it goes into their brain, and it goes into everywhere. It goes into their heart. And we know these are volatile. Yeah. Now, the American Dental Association had a deal with the mercury manufacturers that they would get a kickback on every mercury filling. And so the overlord association thinks it's fine, and the dentists think it's fine. And nobody's thinking very clearly on this whole thing. And that's what happened. It's just now. So this is 25, 30 years later, where the European Dental Association has now outlawed mercury to be part of amalgams. They're kind of slow on the uptake, these guys.
Yeah.
So anyway, I say to him, well, that's interesting. My wife had her fillings removed, and she has some symptoms now. She's not feeling well. And he said, without any lag at all, she's mercury toxic.
Yeah.
Okay, what does that mean? I don't know anything about this. And he says, well, there's nobody in this town that's going to help you or help her. You're going to have to learn how to do this because you're the only one that's going to be able to help her. Wow. And he said, there's a doctor on the West Coast, and he trains doctors in this stuff, and he's real smart, and you better go see when his next course is and go out there and learn how to do this. And that's what I did. And I flew to Seattle, and I went to, I learned from him everything that I could. He's very smart.
Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt.
Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. And he taught me this whole thing. So this is like 1996, 97. And I come back, and I learned voodoo muscle testing. I learned all kinds of stuff that I didn't have any idea of. And I did this on her. And then I found a kind of a crazy savant biochemist, because when I went home from Klinghardt, he had me giving her 14 things at the same time, 14 different supplements in order to detox her mercury.
It's
And it was just
extensive.
not
Yeah.
doable.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just not doable.
Yeah.
So I met with this biochemist and we started to put our heads together and we came up with a formulation where it was a liquid formulation. You could do the drops and it would bind mercury and it would, and lead and arsenic and the rest of the stuff that we're all full of, and get it out of the body. And that product was called Metal Free. And we started using it and we started writing up case reports of people who took this supplement. And we would see their mercury levels just dive, like it would get the mercury out of the body and other heavy metals and aluminum. So I published a couple of these articles. I was writing some articles in some journals, and I had doctors start calling me up, like, where do we get this stuff? And I said, well, we sort of have it made for us, but we could make some more. And we started a company called Body Health. And if you go to bodyhealth.com, you could see now there was a lot of products, but the original product was metal free.
Yeah.
And you know, thousands of doctors started to buy the product because they could use it on their patients and their patients would get better. So in about 6 months, she got better. Like all her symptoms went away. And we had friends that were sort of aware of what was going on and what was and what she was doing. And when she got better, they were like, well, what did you do? And she said, well, my husband was doing this voodoo on me, and they started to call me. And so I didn't really want to do it. I was doing emergency room. This was a lot of fun,
Yeah.
but I wasn't sure that this would work in anybody else. And emergency room is shift work. So it's, you know, it was a 12-hour shift. Either you work 7 in the morning and 7 at night, or you work 7 at night, 7 in the morning. And so you'd work 3 shifts and then you'd have a day or 2 off. And so these people were calling me. I've got migraine headaches and I've got ulcerative colitis and I've got rheumatoid arthritis and I've got, you know, whatever. I want to see you. Okay. So
You had no choice in the matter. Hey, it was like something was like, no, this is the path you're going to go down. Sorry.
Right. So in her nursing office, she had a spare room. I said, okay, Tuesday afternoon, 2:00, I'll meet you there. And I wasn't charging anybody because I really wasn't sure what I was doing.
Yep.
But I thought, well, it's a challenge and it's fun. And I like challenges. So I started to see people. And this actually, it worked. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife and I started going seminar after seminar after seminar. Like we would seek out who knows what they're doing. Let's go learn from them. And so we did this together. And then together we started doing this treatment on people, and people started to get better. And pretty soon it was just like massively busy. And I already had a separate career. And so this was more fun than the emergency room. And I just switched careers, and we opened up a clinic. It's called LifeWorks Wellness Center. It's 25 years now that we've been doing this. And it's one of the largest clinics in the United States now. We have 80 plus employees and 3 MDs, 5 nurse practitioners. Like, it's a big place. And we see people who come from all over the world because our real specialty is people with unsolved medical problems. Our average patient has seen 13 doctors. Yep. And it ranges from cancer to autoimmune disease to chronic fatigue, Lyme, all this stuff. And what we do gets them better. So it's been just a glorious ride of it. You know, I love education. I love learning. I did 14 years of formal medical training after high school, so multiple specialties. And I just applied that interest to this. And so we have so we do amazing things with people.
Yeah.
And they get better.
Yeah. How often are the chronically ill patients, how often do they have heavy metals? Like, how often is heavy metals part of that disease?
Often. Yeah. Virtually all of us have heavy metals. Yeah. Okay. If you do a challenge on virtually anyone off the street, they have high lead for sure. Depending on what their exposure has been, they have high mercury, arsenic, cadmium, aluminum. Yeah. The tricky thing about this is, and I think some practitioners know this and some don't, the symptoms of poisoning with heavy metal overlap symptoms of other things.
Oh
chronic
my gosh, yeah.
Epstein-Barr infection and chronic CMV and parasites and other things.
Mhm.
And one of the things that was the brilliance of Klinghardt is that if you don't stage the treatment based on the patient's own body, you could be doing something to them, like trying to remove heavy metals, when their body isn't up to being able to do that
Right.
because it's too tough for them to do it. And I'll give you a story on this.
Yeah.
This was several years ago. We had a lady, she was the top real estate agent in Tampa Bay. She's in her middle 50s. She's very successful. She's very smart. Like, this lady can wheel and deal, okay? And be able to communicate with people and provide a service. She's like an amazing person. And she went to a practitioner who she was feeling tired, who did a test on her that showed that she had high lead levels in her body, and decided to give her an intravenous treatment where you give a chemical that binds with the lead and takes it out.
EDTA.
Now, EDTA.
EDTA.
That's right. And he wasn't aware of the fact that if your liver's backed up and you take a chemical, and most of the lead is in the bones, so the body sort of stores it wherever it can, trying to keep it out of the way of important things. So it's in the bones, it's in the soft tissue, and now you give a chelator. A chelator is something that will bind the metal, and you pull it out of those places. It goes into the bloodstream, and it goes to the liver, which is the organ which has to get it out. And it gets it out through the stool, or it sets it up to get it out by attaching something to the lead so that it can be urinated out through the kidneys. Now, this gal had a bunch of parasites in her intestine and a leaky gut, and was eating a lot of foods that were harming her intestine. And so that intestine was flowing a lot of toxic stuff to her liver, and her liver was, so to speak, full, like it couldn't take anymore. And when that lead came by, the liver basically said, I'm on bypass. I can't take anymore. And that lead went into her brain. And she turned into, from this very dynamic woman, to a bag lady, literally a bag lady. She started, instead of her power suits, she was wearing grandma long dresses. She was carrying around a recorder with earphones and was listening to religious music. And she brought all her things with her in 2 large paper shopping bags.
Wow.
Her daughter brought her to me. It took about 2 years to get that mercury out of her brain, because the treatment that she had given to remove the heavy metals was out of sequence. And so heavy metals are a part of every program, but they're rarely the first thing, because 100% of people today are walking around, unless they've had careful work with a knowledgeable practitioner, they have a bad gut, they have bad bacteria, they have parasites, they have leak, they're eating the wrong foods, and their livers are full. And if you try to do a big time detox on them, you're just going to make them sick. And that's, so you have to stage this properly so that you can do it, so that they actually are getting better. And when it gets to the time to do metals, when the metals now show that the body is like, we're ready now to do this, then it's a piece of cake and they don't get sick.
This is why I wanted to talk to you, because I've interviewed several people on heavy metals. I myself, when I finally did get tested, I found out that my lead was off the charts. My mercury was as high as it could go. I have no mercury fillings. My mom was loaded with them, but I don't have any.
Yeah.
And I never thought that heavy metals would have ever been an issue for me. So because I had thyroid problems and I was trying to figure out, okay, why do I have a thyroid conversion problem? I have a high reverse T3. I have normal T4, normal TSH. And so I was determined to get to the root of why this was. And I knew that heavy metals could be a problem.
Right.
So I just thought, oh, I'm going to test heavy metals and then I'm just going to take it off the table because I'm sure I don't have any. I'm so healthy. Well, not so much, right? I had these very high levels and I was like, what? So I went out and I did my research and I started doing the Andy Cutler protocol, which is known to be one of the safer protocols because you take these chelators and their half-life so that you're not redistributing the heavy metals. And well, I started gaining weight. I started losing my vision. And this was on low doses. And so I had to stop. And then I would start again when my vision would start to come back. And so then I would start this up again. And same thing would happen. So this has gone on for years. So then I started doing IV chelation, thinking, well, maybe I'll just go straight to the punch and go do high doses, not low doses. And so I feel like I've just run the gamut. I've done OSR, same thing. I started losing my vision, having these symptoms. So I've just been like on, off for years. And then when I heard you talking about it, I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I love Dietrich. Out of all the people that I've listened to, I think he's one of the most knowledgeable as well. So knowing that you trained with him, but yes, when you look at his protocol, it's like, take these 20 million supplements. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. But I just, what is your thoughts on those types of chelation processes? Because there's so many different takes on how to chelate properly. So do you ever IV chelate somebody? Is there ever a place for that?
Yeah, there is, but you have to make sure that your patient is set up so that they can handle it.
Right.
Before you take someone for elective surgery, the doctor sends them to the internist or the family practitioner, and they make sure, yeah, your lungs are okay. Yeah, your heart's okay. Yeah, your blood pressure's under control. Yeah, if they're doing a good job, your hormones are under control, so that you can take the surgery and make it.
Yeah.
Now that's not, that's not an emergency situation, but it's just a practical thing that any knowledgeable physician would do. It's actually protocol. Okay. So removing heavy metals from a body is like cardiac surgery. It's a major thing because these things are majorly toxic. And you want to make sure that before you engage in it, that your other stuff is good enough so that your body can actually handle it, deal with it, and get it out. And I think that's the most important thing that's very underappreciated by doctors who do chelation therapy. So we do chelation therapy. It's never the first thing.
No.
It might be a year before you even touch it.
Right.
And they have high levels of the heavy metals in their body, but you can hurt them. And the doctor, the first of all, do no harm. The Hippocrates thing is, when you're taking someone on, you just got to make sure that what you're doing is the right thing and that you're actually going to help them and not turn them into a bag lady.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because that is
scary.
That is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
And so
are there things that you can do to test to see, like, would you do a GI map test, or is there like simple blood work that people could get to check their liver enzymes, like just to see what needs to be worked on first?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So I think, this could be naturopaths or chiropractors who are knowledgeable in this, or medical doctors or DOs, who are, who have an understanding of this, and then they can approach it with that in mind. So if the person's hormones are all messed up, or they're hypothyroid, or they've got an autoimmune condition going on, and 100% of people have a gut condition going on.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
This is like everyone we see. First program is a gut program.
Yeah.
Get the gut fixed, make sure the liver's good, check all these hormone things at the same time, and then start building a program around that so that then people feel it, they notice it, they start to feel better.
Yeah.
And then when you've dealt with it, then you could safely address the metals again carefully, because you got to just make sure that the person can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's tolerable.
So when it comes to the hormones, how do you see heavy metals affecting a woman's hormones? Because we're in an epidemic of hormonal weight loss resistance, hormone levels that are out of balance, estrogen dominance, women going through perimenopause and menopause, which are my ladies, they're having a hell of a time. And I believe so much actually comes down to the chemical load in the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's full of too much stuff,
Yeah.
including heavy metals. And it does mess with the whole system. I saw a 26-year-old, my last patient right before I came over here. He's 26 years old. He's got a testosterone of 190. He feels terrible. He's depressed. He just spent 5 months, got daily IVs from a practitioner in our city across town, trying to do all this stuff with him. And his testosterone's 190 and a bunch of other stuff too. And the guy was a wreck, $200,000 later. He's a wreck. And I looked at the hormone test and I said, didn't he give you some, like maybe you need some testosterone?
Yeah.
And I've been telling him the whole time. So yes, they're big. They're very important.
Yeah.
And sometimes people need the hormones. And then when they get detoxified and they feel better, they may not need them or they need less.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, because there's many physicians out there, functional practitioners, who are like, oh, it's because you have heavy metals, because you have parasites, it's because you have adrenal fatigue. Let's fix that. And then it'll fix your thyroid, it'll fix your hormones. And these people feel like such garbage because they don't have a thyroid function, properly. And I always say, why not take I take thyroid medication right now with the thought of one day I hope to get off of it once I clear out my heavy metals. But right now I want to feel good.
Right.
While I'm doing
it.
I'm
with you totally on that. We try to get everything optimized. Yes. And if we have to do hormones or have to do thyroid, well, what the heck? It's no big deal. These aren't like toxic drugs.
No.
You get the body up to where it can actually start to deal with its own internal toxic environment. And to try to do it over, a limp leg and so to speak, and a brain can't think, and like, oh, I don't know where I am. And you give them some of these other things, these buffers, and they're like, okay, I'm not all good yet, but at least I can function. I could go to work. I could, take care of my children, or, whatever the thing is.
Yeah. Do the heavy metals, are they affecting the hormones because of what it's doing to our brain and to the pituitary and hypothalamus? Or is it because it's docking onto the receptors and acting like the estrogens? Or is it a combination, do you think?
I think it's a combination. So the heavy metals will sit on the receptor sites. Those heavy metals will poison the ovary and adrenal and testicle so that they can't make the hormones. They'll poison the hypothalamus and the pituitary so they can't put out, LH, FSH, the hypothalamic hormones. They hit everywhere, and they inside of a nerve cell, there is like a conduit system. It's how the nerve cells, so nerve cells have outreach where they sample stuff. So like a huge part of the nervous system is in the intestine. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's the gut intestinal nervous system. It's vagus nerve. Mm-hmm. So the hub of the vagus nerve is way up in the brain. Mm-hmm. But the dendrites are way down in the intestine. And they sample. And they sample what's coming through. And if they get a heavy metal, like a little meal of a heavy metal, the shuttle system that brings the stuff from the end of the nerve to the home body of the nerve, this tubulin, it's poisoned by heavy metals. And it dissolves. And there are some very interesting videos where you can see nerve cells and tissue culture exposed to little bits of mercury vapor, and the nerves basically, the tubulin inside the nerve cell basically just dissolves. And now you've got a semi-dead nerve cell which can't do its normal job of transmit information and influence back and forth between the brain. And this has a huge effect on everything. So these
That's
things
crazy.
they're bad things.
Yeah, yeah. And so if it's affecting the vagus nerve, do you think how it affects, because you had mentioned migraines being something that you'll see with people. And I know that there's a big connection with vagus nerve and migraines. So have you
Sure,
seen
and
people's chronic migraines going away when you chelate the heavy metals?
well, you can.
Yeah.
You can. It's not usually a single thing. Like
Yeah.
a complex symptom isn't usually a single thing.
Right.
Usually there's multiples of these things.
Yeah.
So, they have low grade infection and they may have yeast overgrowth or, you
Right.
know, various kinds of parasites or things like that. And so you sort of chip away. And at one point they were doing okay. And at that point, the load was under what the body could actually handle.
Right.
But then it reached a point where it was too much. And sometimes the too much is a bad boss or a bad mate. It might be
Like a stressful event.
a stressful event.
Yeah.
It might be a C-section or an appendectomy. It might be a car accident. It might be that you went to India and got a big parasite load of some street food that you ate. It could be literally anything where the balance then fell in. And then we have in all of us many different kinds of microorganisms that are kept at bay by our immune system. But if the immune system has a big challenge and it goes down, then these other guys wake up and now you really got a party because the Epstein-Barr turns on and the herpes type 6 turns on and the dormant Lyme turns on and now you got a whole thing going on with the heavy metals and with all the plastics and the chemicals and the pesticides and the rest of the stuff that we're just, we are full of it. And so our tolerance for our environment now is making us kind of, we're having a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah. I can check off all those boxes because mine, it was like it was like a snap of a finger and suddenly all these health problems rose. And I had been to India. I just traveled to India for 4 months.
You didn't tell me that.
I moved. I was exposed to chemicals in the house.
Yeah.
I had a C-section a year before. So
God, I got them all.
You do? So yeah, so I get that. I do think that that's what happens where it's just like the straw that breaks is that how you say the straw that breaks the camel's back or whatever? Like it was, yeah. And then suddenly it's like your body just goes, screw you. I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. I'm in overload. And the whole system starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
So with the chemical free then product that you have, let's talk about that because I got very excited about it, which is why I wanted you to come on because I'm always on the lookout for how do I detox these heavy metals properly. And I really appreciate you saying like we got to prepare the body for this detoxification. So preparing the liver, I would think very important, making sure that you're eating, I think you agree with me, a paleo based diet, something that's low inflammatory, that's going to help with your gut. Get rid of the parasites. Can somebody then just jump into taking your product? Or would you say, you know what, let's take a bunch of other stuff first and then go to chemical free? Or can it be combined with certain things that would help?
Well, I think the things that you said, you sort of the basics of getting your house in order is you want an organic based diet because the food is one of the most toxic things that people expose themselves to. So if you're eating fast food or any packaged food, you really literally are putting yourself at risk. So you want to eat real food that you can identify by looking at it. A chicken leg is a chicken leg and a peach is a peach, but what's a Triscuit? Look on the list, and when they got all these things that you don't even know what they are, well, that isn't food, that's chemicals. And so these are poisonous to us. So if you can sort of orient yourself to that, eat real food, make sure you're getting plenty of the reverse osmosis or bottled water that's really clean because the water supply is contaminated everywhere. It's really important. You got to make sure that you're getting enough sleep. If you're sleeping 5 and 6 hours a night, you're not getting enough sleep. Your body's not going to work right. And so there's all these, I wear this, it's called an aura ring,
Yeah. I
like
sent mine back. It stressed me out.
when I got it, I had learned to survive because I was, in the emergency room and in the practice I was in before, I had learned that I could sleep 4.5, 5 hours a night, and I thought I was okay.
Right.
And then when I put the ring on, I've had it for about 3 years. I started looking at it as like the scores I was getting from my sleep were like terrible. And so I decided, okay, I'm gonna change my ways. And now if I get 6.5 to 7 hours of sleep every night, I get high sleep scores. I get lots of deep sleep. These are like, these are no, there's no bargaining with this stuff.
Yeah, they're foundational.
Okay, they're foundational.
Mhm.
You have to get sunshine. You have to exercise. You know, you have to correct your social environment, because if you're spending a lot of time with people who don't like you or don't think you're any good, that isn't good for you. And so these are sort of basics that if you're trying to get healthy or you're trying to get well, that you just have to put in,
Yeah.
because there just isn't anything to it.
Yeah.
The other part of it is that there are basic supplements that 100% of people need.
Yeah.
So Body Health, we make them. So one of the things to correct Klinghart's 14 things was I put together a multivitamin that had about almost all the stuff that you'd need. So it's 16 whole food organic concentrate, but it's got extra C and enough vitamin D to meet your daily requirement, and CoQ10 and methylated B vitamins. It's like really complete for 2 tablets twice a day. So you do that. The other thing, because the food isn't going to nourish you enough, okay? Everybody needs omega-3 oils. So that's like a gotta do it. We make another product called Perfect Amino. It's amino acids.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
90% of people are deficient in amino acids, so we got throw in the amino acids. These are things like if you're preparing yourself to be well and you put these various things in, everybody needs extra magnesium. Okay. So almost everybody needs digestive enzymes, probably a probiotic. So these are like they're sort of no-brainer, just do those things.
Mm-hmm.
We find that 6 weeks of that on an organic paleo diet, most people, their gut starts to feel better. They lose their gas and their heartburn and their bloating, and they start to get their energy back. So these are all preliminaries to anything else that you do. And a lot of people just doing that will feel like amazingly better.
As amino acids, people don't realize how important they are for the detoxification system.
Right.
People just think, oh, amino acids. I know so many people that take your product. I recommend your product all the time. And it's mostly so that they can, for muscle building, muscle preservation, they get this complete protein, but it's really great for detoxification.
Right.
And
Right. The
people
whole
don't
detox
realize that.
system, yeah, is amino acids. Women, you're in the peri and menopausal women, bones are a problem. Bones are 50% protein. Women don't eat enough protein. You add the amino acids, you can actually build your bone back. It's not a calcium deficiency. Osteoporosis is not a calcium deficiency. It's an amino acid deficiency. And so, and maybe a vitamin D deficiency and a hormone deficiency. These are all things that are sort of part of it. And then so you get the person on the basic things, then get your hormones measured, get your thyroid hormone, full thyroid panel measured. And you can start to look at, these are very simple things and they're not expensive.
No.
And you actually then put your sort of basics in on what the body needs, and it'll start to function better.
Yeah.
And then you may have an issue with heavy metals or with other things, and at that point, you'll work with someone to help you. Our metal-free and chemical detox product is very safe. It's a liquid. You can start with a drop, so that you can go very slowly, so that you don't sort of overdo or overwhelm yourself by pulling out too much. The nice thing about this product is it 2 or 3 times increases the amount of glyphosate and plastics, phthalates, and uh, atrazine, like our bodies are full of this stuff. So it gets the metals, it also gets the chemicals.
Right.
And you can tease it in on a very low level and do it with this other stuff, and you'll improve your health.
Yeah. You even have the perfect aminos inside that product in low amounts, but it's in
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is there still risk of redistribution of the heavy metals when you use it?
No, it's very well bound. The chemical like EDTA is the what's called the binding coefficient. So here's lead, here's EDTA, it sticks to it. But there's other things that stick to it better than lead. Like calcium sticks to EDTA, or zinc sticks to EDTA better than lead. So if you pick up the lead and then it complexes with the zinc, it drops the lead. That's a problem. So the carbon 60 and the other herbs that are in the metal free and chemical detox, the binding is very complete, and it doesn't let go of it. So
Okay.
the chances of it dropping it off somewhere are very slight.
Yeah. And I still hear you though, you still have to go slow because it can start to come out too quickly, which doesn't make a person feel very good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a process, and getting rid of heavy metals takes a while, and it's okay.
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
You just have to go with it.
Would you say to come on and off of it like throughout, like, because we're always going to be exposed. We always have these chemicals in our environment. Is it something that, we do for 6 months and then go off for 6 months and then go on or do you take it all the time?
I take it all the time.
You do.
I take it as a
daily.
preventative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know I measure my stuff and I'm careful. Like I rarely eat out at restaurants. All the food we eat at home is organic. And you're exposed. You are just exposed all over the place. And there's really nothing you can do about it. Like you do your best, avoiding plastics and avoiding fumy gasoline stuff. And but it's there. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that people, keeping a binder with them or taking it every day is sort of a necessity these days.
Yeah, I bet. And I feel like it would be one that I could safely take and not lose my vision because it's not as harsh as these other ones are.
Well, color is doing the strongest chemical chelators, DMSA, DMPS. When I first learned chelation, because I went and got certified in chelation, and we started doing DMPS.
Yeah.
And I look at people in my IV room, and they would be walking out of the IV room holding their backs because their kidneys were in such spasm from the chemicals. And I'm like, I can't do this. This isn't the right way to do it. It's too toxic.
Yeah.
So
those are all I've done them all. They're all very harsh. And I don't like them.
Yeah.
Not one bit. So I'm excited to try your product, and
Okay.
I am gonna get some and give her a go because I've been needing to find something. And you guys never approached me, just so everybody knows I'm not affiliated. I just really am excited about this product. And I've heard people talk about how it benefited them and how it got rid of their heavy metals. So I am excited to try it. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And if I lived where you were, I would be coming to your clinic. So tell everybody where they can find you and work with you. Because you're still practicing yourself, aren't you?
I am.
Yes.
Every day. I went in at 8 o'clock today, and I finished about 5 minutes before I called you. So, yes,
you're a machine.
I'm a machine. I love what I do, and it's
you're practicing what you're preaching, obviously.
I am practicing what I'm preaching. We're in Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
Which is Tampa Bay area.
Okay.
I
was just in Sarasota a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so we're just an hour north of there.
Yeah. Okay.
The website is LifeWorks. It's one word, LifeWorksWellnessCenter.com. You can go on there. There's hundreds of videos on there, lots of information. If you're interested in becoming a patient, you can fill out a survey and then someone from our house will call you. Um, the other website for the products is called Body Health. So it's bodyhealth.com. Again, there's hundreds of videos on there, lots of information. There's a free newsletter for each one. So if you want to sort of see
Yeah,
what
it's a
I'm,
good newsletter.
thank you. That comes out a couple times a month, and you can get sort of updated on what I'm thinking about or what new stuff is or patient successes that we've had. So that's the best way to find me. And we are seeing new patients, our specialty. So especially people who have like serious unsolved problems, or we're one of the biggest alternative cancer clinics in the
Wow.
in the United States or in North America.
Wow.
And we have very good results with people. So if people are, scared or don't want to do the regular chemical treatments, I think we offer something that's actually usually way better.
Yeah,
So
I bet. And your wife today, does she still have Hashimoto's?
she doesn't have Hashimoto's. She has nothing.
Nothing.
She
I
is a
didn't think
podium
so.
triathlete again. She's energetic. She
Wow.
chases around 9 grandchildren. She volunteers. She's got a million too many things going on.
Wow. It's a
Uh,
good success story.
yeah,
Thanks to
yeah.
you.
She's 75 as well, and she looks probably 55. And she's amazing, and she's totally fine.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Just goes to show. Well, thank
yeah.
you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate
Okay.
you sharing your knowledge, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Karen.